5. Cheap camping brands everyone ignores. What if the cheapest camping gear was actually the best? The camping industry has convinced people that $400 sleeping bags are just what serious campers buy, that the logo on your tent says something true about you. Here's what they don't want you to know. There are brands quietly building legitimate outdoor gear for decades that most campers walk straight past, not because the gear is bad, because they can't afford the influencers. Stick around because number 2 has been outperforming the industry for 50 years. Almost nobody knows. Number 5, nature hike. Have you ever put a tent back on the shelf because the price felt too low to trust? That instinct is not an accident. Nature hike, Chinese manufactured, aggressively priced, and the brand that makes premium gear retailers the most uncomfortable at trade shows. When you see a nature hike tent listed for $89, the assumption is that something is wrong. A tent that's cheap has to be flimsy, has to leak, has to buckle the first time a real rainstorm hits. The price itself feels like a warning because the industry has spent years making sure it does. Low price gets coded as low commitment, low materials, low confidence in the product. That framing is not neutral, it is deliberate. Here's the part that breaks that story. Nature Hike manufactures tents using the same material specifications found in tents from brands charging 3 to 4 times the price. Their Cloud Up 2 ultralight tent weighs 1.48 kilograms, fully packed, maintains a serious waterproof rating on the fly, and uses aluminum alloy poles that hold under moderate wind load. At that price point, that spec sheet shouldn't exist, but it does, because Nature Hike operates without the cost layers that premium brands treat as unavoidable. No flagship retail leases, no 7-figure athlete contracts, no lifestyle campaigns built around stock footage of beautiful people on pristine ridgelines. Every dollar not spent on branding goes into the product. Their sleeping bag range follows the same logic. Fill power ratings that match or exceed comparably priced alternatives. Draft collars and hood drawcords included as standard rather than upgrade features. Shell fabrics treated with durable water-repellent finishes. The jacket line uses the same seam-taped construction found in technical outerwear costing 3 times as much. The trekking poles are aluminum with cork grips and weigh under 500 grams per pair. The fair criticism is quality control consistency. At high volume, occasional units ship with a misaligned seam or an off-track zipper. It happens. The improvement year over year is real, but it isn't yet at the level of brands running tighter factory oversight. If you receive a unit with a visible defect, the return process is straightforward and the replacement rate is high. For a brand at this price point, that matters more than people give it credit for. At 1/3 of the price, you could buy 2 tents and still come out ahead, which tells you everything about where the margin was going in the first place. Nature Hike didn't discover a manufacturing secret, it exposed one. Ultralight camping gear was never about engineering no one else could replicate. It was about who controlled the story of what serious gear was allowed to look like. Number 4. Teton Sports. Teton Sports, Salt Lake City, founded in 2005, building backpacks and sleeping bags that outtest mid-range gear from brands spending more on marketing than materials and receiving almost no credit for it. They're findable on Amazon, in smaller outdoor shops, occasionally at sporting goods chains, but they exist almost entirely beneath the awareness of the mainstream camping community. Not because the products underdeliver, because the industry's attention economy doesn't have room for a brand that won't pay to be in it. No press samples sent to reviewers, no affiliate commissions built into the link structure of gear guides, no relationships with the editors who decide what makes the annual roundup. The access game costs money, and Teton spent that money on materials instead. The Teton Sports Scout 3400 internal frame backpack holds 55 liters, has an adjustable torso length that actually works across body types, a removable rain cover built into the base pocket, and a lumbar pad system iterated through years of real user feedback. Price, around $80. A comparable spec from a premium brand starts at $250 and climbs past $400 depending on materials tier. The functional difference between the two on a weekend trip is difficult to identify. The price difference is not. The sleeping bags are where Teton earns its most serious reputation. The Celsius series uses a modified offset, double-layer construction, a technique that eliminates cold spots. These are the weak points where insulation shifts during sleep and leaves thin patches that drain heat directly from the body. This is a well-documented problem in sleeping bag design. Most budget manufacturers skip the solution entirely because the double-layer construction costs more to produce, and the average buyer never knows the difference. Teton includes it anyway, which is why their bags have accumulated tens of thousands of reviews from buyers who expected to be disappointed and came back to write about how they weren't. That pattern, lowered expectation, and genuine surprise is the most reliable signal a product can send. The camp chair line follows the same logic. Heavy-duty steel frames, rated load capacities that hold weather-resistant fabric, not the lightest option on the market, not trying to be, built for people who want to sit down at a campsite without thinking about whether the chair will hold. The industry treats Teton with polite silence, no roundups, no YouTube comparisons, no editor's picks, not because the gear fails, but because the brand refuses to fund the access that puts brands into those conversations in the first place. Teton Sports is what the outdoor industry looks like when someone decides the product is the point. That's precisely why no one talks about it. Number 3, Decathlon and Quechua. Decathlon, the largest sporting goods retailer in the world by revenue and in the United States, a brand that most of the population has never walked into. In Europe, Decathlon is simply where outdoor people shop. In France, Germany, Spain, the Netherlands, across Southeast Asia and South America, their in-house camping brand, Quechua, is as familiar as any premium label. Professional hikers, weekend campers, trail runners, military personnel buying personal kit on their own budget, they use Quechua without apology and without the feeling of settling. The gear is just where they start. There's no status conversation happening. The product works, the price is fair, and the trip is the point. American outdoor culture has systematically overlooked it, partly because Decathlon's U.S. footprint is still expanding, mostly because the brand commits the cardinal sin of not looking expensive enough to be credible. The stores are bright and utilitarian. The packaging is straightforward. There is no origin story involving a mountaineer and a moment of revelation. Just product, clearly labeled, honestly priced. The Quechua MH100 sleeping bag is comfort rated to 10 degrees Celsius, weighs 490 grams, compresses to the size of a water bottle, and costs under $20. That is not a misprint. The 2-second tent, named for its literal pop-up deployment time, is a cult product across European camping culture. Under $60, built with reinforced pole junctions to handle repeated use across multiple seasons without structural fatigue. Their fleece mid-layers use recycled polyester and retail under $25. Their hydration packs are carried by people who stopped thinking of themselves as budget shoppers the moment they looked at the construction and realized the price was irrelevant to what they were holding. The trekking pole range deserves particular attention. Aluminum shaft, cork grip, reliable locking mechanism, under $30 per pair. Independent trail testers have run these alongside poles from brands charging $120 to $180 and found no meaningful performance difference across 3-season conditions. The weight difference is measurable. The performance difference, for most hikers on most trails, is not. Where Quechua makes honest concessions is at the extreme end. The gear is built for three-season use and temperate conditions. The reality of how 95% of campers actually camp. Winter alpine use is a different conversation. But for everything else, Quechua outperforms its price bracket by a margin that should embarrass the brands charging 3 times as much for equivalent function. What Decathlon also does that almost no competitor attempts at this price point is vertical integration across every product category. They design in-house, test in-house, and manufacture to their own specification rather than buying in from third-party suppliers and rebranding. That structure removes the middleman margin at every layer. The saving doesn't go to shareholders, it goes to the shelf price. When a $20 sleeping bag performs at this level, it isn't a loss leader or a compromised product. It's what happens when the markup chain is shortened to almost nothing. The outdoor industry didn't ignore Decathlon by accident. A brand that size, entering a market, threatens margins across the board. Better to act like it doesn't exist than to explain to customers why the same function costs 3 times more somewhere else. Half the world figured this out decades ago. The gold mine was always there. Number 2, military surplus, US government issue, and European mil-spec. This one isn't a brand. It's an entire category of gear the outdoor industry has spent 50 years quietly burying, because it predates the industry entirely and has never needed it. Military surplus equipment, US government issue, German Bundeswehr, Dutch, Swedish, Finnish, Austrian military spec kit, gear that was not designed to sell at a lifestyle markup in a store where the staff wear branded aprons. Gear designed, contracted, tested, and issued with one specification, keeping personnel functional and alive across every climate and terrain on the planet, under sustained load, with no access to replacements if something fails. The U.S. military's Alice Pack, which stands for All-Purpose Lightweight, Individual Carrying Equipment, entered service in 1973 and remained standard issue for over 30 years. Welded aluminum frame, heavy-duty nylon bag, fully modular attachment system requiring no tools to reconfigure. Surplus Alice packs in good condition sell today for $30 to $60. They are functionally indestructible under recreational use loads. The nylon does not delaminate. The frame does not bend under reasonable loads. The stitching, done to military contract specification, holds in conditions that would stress recreational equivalents visibly. The military wool blanket, the modular sleep system rated to minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, the standard issue poncho, rain protection, and ground sheet in one piece, carried through conditions that would destroy a consumer equivalent on first use. The stainless steel mess kit, designed to nest completely and cook directly on an open flame without warping. The canteen and cup system, packed flat and functional since before most camping brands existed. These are not primitive precursors to modern gear. They are solved problems that the recreational industry reinvented at a premium and sold back to you with better color options. This is gear built to a performance specification no commercial brand has ever had to meet, because no commercial brand faces contractual penalties if its product fails on a mountainside in January. The military spec is not a guideline. It is a floor, enforced by procurement contracts, tested by people whose job it is to find failures before the field does. The legitimate criticism is ergonomics and weight. Military gear was designed for trained personnel carrying weight as a job requirement, not for recreational comfort over long days on trail. The Alice frame will hold 60 pounds. It will not make 60 pounds feel like 40, the way a modern anatomical pack with a load transfer hip belt can. For multi-day technical routes, that gap is real and compounds over days. For base camping, car camping, emergency preparedness, or anyone who values documented field performance over retail narrative, Military surplus is the most undervalued gear ecosystem that exists. It was never going to be advertised to you. The entire outdoor industry is built on the assumption that you've forgotten it's there. They needed you to buy something new. The military spec answer didn't disappear because it stopped working. It was buried because it was too good to leave visible. That's not a conspiracy. That's just how markets work when the oldest solution is also the most honest one. Number 1. Ozark Trail. And here we are. The one that will make some people laugh and should make everyone think. Be honest. Have you ever walked past something at Walmart without even picking it up, purely because of where you were standing? That's the whole game. Ozark Trail is Walmart's in-house outdoor brand. That sentence alone is enough to make a particular kind of camper reach for the back button. The Walmart Association carries its own freight, its own connotations, its own dismissals, its own signal that whatever follows isn't meant for serious people. And that reaction, reflexive, instinctive, rooted entirely in retail location rather than product reality, is exactly why Ozark Trail is number 1 on this list. If a store logo can override a specification sheet, the logo was always the product, not the gear. Numbers. The Ozark Trail. 10-person instant cabin tent, freestanding, with a 78-inch center height, electrical cord access port, room divider, gear loft, and carry bag, sells for $99. The Coleman equivalent runs $179 to $220. REI's house brand equivalent pushes past $300. The materials are the same ecosystem. Coated polyester fly, steel and fiberglass hybrid poles, clip and sleeve attachment, taped seams, welded corners. The material gap between a $99 Ozark Trail tent and a $250 name brand tent is substantially narrower than the price gap implies. The sleeping bags test within range of their rated temperatures, and third-party comparisons run without financial stake in the outcome. The camp chairs hold their rated loads. The hard coolers, and this is the detail that tends to stop people, have earned a quiet reputation in overlanding communities for ice retention performance that tracks within meaningful distance of Yeti and Pelican at 4 to 5 times the price. The handles are less refined, the latches feel different, the logo is different, the ice melts at roughly the same rate. Here's the part the industry prefers you not to examine too closely. Ozark Trail products are manufactured in many of the same factories, sometimes on the same production lines, as mid-tier and premium gear from brands you've decided you trust. The product comes off the line. It receives a label based on which contract it's fulfilling. One version goes into a box marked Ozark Trail and lands at Walmart. Another version goes into a box with a different logo and lands at a specialty retailer with exposed brick walls and staff who look like they just finished a 14er. You pay $45 for one, you pay $160 for the other. The tent doesn't know the difference, the rain doesn't know the difference, the ground you sleep on doesn't know the difference. The outdoor industry's least comfortable truth, truth, is not that cheap gear is always equivalent. At the extreme end, genuine ultralight performance, expedition-rated weather resistance, multi-decade durability, real differences exist, and real spending is sometimes justified. The uncomfortable truth is that for most camping, done by most people, in most conditions, the gap between the $99 option and the $350 option is almost entirely a gap in storytelling. Ozark Trail, sitting under the fluorescent lights next to the fishing tackle and the folding lawn chairs, is the most honest proof that the story was always the premium product. 5 brands, 5 different stories, one industry that would prefer you not look at any of them too carefully. None of these were ignored because the gear failed. They were ignored because they didn't fund the machine that decides what serious campers are supposed to buy. No ambassadors, no media access, no editorial relationships, no sponsored content arriving in the inbox of the person writing the buyer's guide. The outdoor industry didn't build a wall around these brands. It just made sure the spotlight never reached them. And in that darkness, quietly, the products kept working. Trip after trip, season after season, for people who never needed the label to feel confident in the woods. The mountain doesn't know what you paid. The storm doesn't ease up for the right logo. The outdoors is the one place genuinely indifferent to your budget, and these brands figured that out before anyone was listening. That's the gold mine. If this changed how you think about your kit, hit subscribe. There's more where this came from. Drop a comment below. Which of these have you used and what happened? I read every one.